and welcome to Works in Progress. My name is Allison Harper, and today we are going to talk about sidewalks. We have Customer Service Manager Jason Brown with the Department of Public Works here with us today to give us a little bit more information about sidewalks. Jason, thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course, Allison. Thanks for having me.
So let's go ahead and just dive in to get some valuable information about sidewalks. So a common question that we receive from residents as a customer service manager, you get a lot of questions and inquiries. They question, why does their residential area not have sidewalks? It could be a more established neighborhood, but they see sidewalks are installed in new developments. Can you give us a little bit more information on that one?
Absolutely. So we get this question all the time from residents who, in the various neighborhoods across town, who are looking to be able to think in their mind, walk around their neighborhoods, get from A to B safely without having to drive. And the reason why you see some neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks in the neighborhood and newer neighborhoods generally that have these sidewalks, that's a change in philosophy and the way that we have approached development and the amenities that we want to offer to our residents for safety, for multimodal transportation. What happened in Chesapeake is in the 1980s and into the 90s, the city of Chesapeake was experiencing a huge residential and commercial development boom. So you have myriad new neighborhoods that are being constructed throughout the parts of Chesapeake that were previously more rural or ex-urban. And what was happening with the design standards at that time is there was no requirement for those sidewalks. Mm-hmm. Over time, as the city staff and by extension our city leaders identified the need and the desire for sidewalks to provide options for those who lived in neighborhoods to be able to safely or more safely use the streets, walk around the neighborhood and get from A to B, we started to introduce the need or the requirements for sidewalks as part of new construction in new neighborhoods and new subdivisions. So what you now see is more established neighborhoods like you'd alluded to that were constructed in the 60s, the 1970s, and even into the 80s that did not have sidewalks in the neighborhoods. A lot of the newer, more recently constructed subdivisions, starting really in the mid-90s and moving forward, you're going to see sidewalks and try to build those design standards and requirements around what was best for the public, both from the motorist perspective and from the pedestrian perspective. And that's what we do.
So if residents want to request sidewalks, it may be in their neighborhood, it may be on major arterial or collector roadways, what is that process that they have to go through? And we also have to remember with sidewalks, it comes at cost. So are there budgetary constraints with that as well?
So first and foremost, if you're a resident in Chesapeake and you live in an area without sidewalks, we would encourage you to reach out to us all the time and share your feedback with us. We, of course, call 382-CITY. You can get on our website at cityofchesapeake.net and use the form to contact us. We always want to hear from residents. We always want information. We always want opinions. What will happen is when a resident, a community group, a business even, asks for consideration of sidewalks, whether it's along a primary route, an arterial route, or even in the neighborhood. Once we receive that, our traffic engineering division, they're the team that is responsible for our transportation network, and sidewalks are considered part of our transportation network. Generally speaking, within residential neighborhoods on residential streets, and especially those interior streets, those 25-mile-per-hour roads, if there are not already sidewalks installed in that neighborhood, the sincere likelihood of that happening is low. And that's just the design standards that neighborhood was built by. There's most often not enough existing right-of-way, and right-of-way in this case is the amount of land that the city has at its disposal to make expansion improvements. We generally don't have enough space without having to go in and offer to purchase land from abutting homeowners to put sidewalks in. However, we still want the feedback. What is most likely to happen is adding sidewalks along primary and arterial road, where there are gaps in existing sidewalk connections. Right. The priority for installing sidewalks is generally going to be in areas where we are trying to connect residential neighborhoods to destinations. And a destination in this case is areas where there are schools, where there are commercial centers with grocery stores and other shops, places of worship, areas where neighboring folks who live in the area would want to get to without having to drive those relatively short distances. Traffic engineering has a set of criteria that includes safety considerations, that includes those factors we talked about what are the destinations that are nearby. And we also look at history of pedestrian vehicle incidents. We obviously want to address problems or issues where there are pedestrian safety concerns that data supports, crash history and whatnot. They then add that to an existing list that we have, and that list is going to be ranked or stratified based on the degree of need that is determined by that data. So, for example, if we have an area that has a shopping center that is a very popular shopping center and several neighborhoods that are nearby, but there's no sidewalk connection along the primary route or the main road from the neighborhood to that commercial center, that probably would be a good candidate for the sidewalk improvement and expansion program. And we need to be good stewards of the city's resources. We need to use the funding that we have responsibly. So we tried to build projects that are going to address the most needs, help the most people as possible, prioritize those first, and then move down that list as the funding becomes available.
Okay. So if someone's just walking around in their neighborhood or walking to a shopping plaza, they could see safety issues with the sidewalks if they're uneven or if there's any significant cracking. So can you elaborate on what are the appropriate steps that residents should take when reporting those concerns so that our staff could go out and correct those safety issues?
Absolutely. So you'll hear this answer regardless of what it is involving the city. If you see a problem, or you have a question, you need help, call 382-CITY, and that's true in this case. If you do see cracking, damage, uneven sidewalk slabs, if it looks unsafe and you have concerns, the best thing they can do is to give us a call and report that. The sidewalk is within the city's right-of-way. So that's the city's responsibility to maintain. And when it comes to safety, there's nothing more paramount than ensuring the safety of our infrastructure. When it comes to cracking, we do have a threshold of about an inch worth of separation in the slabs that we consider to be a safety issue. Some of the cracking in sidewalks is superficial over time. Those concrete slabs will settle, and there might be some kind of superficial or some cosmetic cracking. Again, if a resident sees that, if someone sees a crack or a separation or some damage, chipping, what have you, we encourage them to call 382-CITY and report that. If it's on a public street, our Public Works Department would then go out, investigate, and determine what steps are necessary to make those repairs. In a rare case, it's important to note that not all streets in the city are public streets. There are some neighborhoods, there are some communities, there are some streets that are private streets. And one of the best ways to determine quickly a public street, which is the majority of the streets in Chesapeake, versus a private street is the color of the street signs. If the sign is blue, it's a public street. We use blue street signs for the most part here in Chesapeake to designate public streets. The exception is in the South Norfolk Historic District, where we use decorative black signs within the Historic District. Those are public streets as well. Private streets, which include private communities, private subdivisions, they generally have yellow street signs. And if you see a yellow street sign, that maintenance responsibility on that street is going to be the responsibility of who owns it, which are generally, in that case, property management groups, community groups that have HOAs and other organizations that manage those private communities that are insulated off of the public streets. But generally speaking, most streets are public with the blue sign. And if you see sidewalk that's damaged on one of those streets, please call 382-CITY and report it. And then city staff will investigate and begin the repair process as soon as possible and get that repaired as soon as possible.
Wonderful. Well, lots of good information today, Jason. Thank you so much for being here today. We always want to remember 382-CITY.
That's right. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you. All right. Well, that wraps up this session of Works in Progress. We'll see you next time.